All right, friends. This is a very non-formal start to our talk. I'm so glad that you guys are here. If I've not had a chance to meet you yet, I feel like I've met most of you. But if I've not had a chance to meet you yet, my name is Maddie Pendleton. I am the 56th and middle school pastor here at our Stones Crossing campus. It's going to take me a second to remember. We are in week 3 of our series called Enough, where we are discovering how God is miraculous in the way that He provides for us, especially through other people. Now, He'll provide for us through other people, but sometimes we experience some disappointment. So we're going to dive more into that with our bottom line this week that says our actions can speak when words aren't enough. Now, I know that for most of us, we have some sort of expectations for the people around us. So for a parent, you expect them to come to events that you have, that they're there to listen, to be supportive, help prep dinner or help with your homework. However that relationship is with your parent, you have a certain level of expectation of like what your mom or dad or your stepmom or stepdad should be doing, right? Maybe it's with a friend. You can probably expect your friends to want to hang out with you, to spend that time, right? Maybe if it's a teacher, you expect them to grade your assignments fairly. You expect them to help you with studying things. So we have different expectations for people in our lives. And especially for the people that are important or the people we're seeing all the time, expectations aren't necessarily unhealthy or bad, but they start to crumble and it starts to become an issue when we're realizing that they're becoming unmet. So what we expect from someone or something is no longer there. So for example, your best friend promised to give you back this like super cool sweatshirt of yours you had just got. And they're like, can I borrow it? Pretty please. And it's been a month. And your friend still has your really cool sweatshirt. Maybe your cousin, you said, hey, don't share with the family that I embarrassed myself at school. Like, that's not cool. But somehow you get home and like everyone in your family knows you like made a fool of yourself. Have you guys ever like told a secret to someone your whole family knew? Or to like a group of friends? I mean, I've embarrassed myself many a time, guys. So I have totally been there. Maybe you're a teacher. I feel like this one might be a little more relatable for you guys. Maybe your teacher promised to put in this extra credit assignment for you before the end of the grading period, so your grade would get bumped up, but then you see your report card and it looks like it did before, right? They actually didn't fill it out. They didn't do what they said they were going to do, right? That can be extremely frustrating. Sometimes we know how it feels when your expectations aren't met, but sometimes we're that culprit. How many of you guys have told your parents you were going to like clean your room or do a chore, and then a week later you didn't actually do it? Okay, there's some brave souls over here. All of you guys, I know we've all promised our parents something, said we were going to do it, and didn't do it. Whether you were like 2 years old or 12 or your current age, we have all done that at some point. Maybe your teacher. You say, I'm going to turn the assignment in, I promise. And then it's 2 weeks go by, and you still haven't turned the assignment in. How many of you guys have left a friend on red before? Have you ever left someone on red? You like tell someone, like, I'll get back with you, man. We'll set up a time to hang out. We'll get together. We'll watch that movie. And it doesn't happen. It never actually goes anywhere. And so when we're living like this, when we're setting expectations up for other people, or people have expectations for us, we don't follow through, people are going to believe us less and less. We're going to become less reliable, less trustworthy, and it's going to be very difficult to get us back onto the point where it's like, okay, like we have healthy expectations of one another. So when words are not met with action, or people don't follow through on their promise, we stop believing them, or vice versa, they stop believing us. So how can we be people who not only say that we care, but are intentional about showing it too? So last week we talked about a guy named John, and he was one of the people that helped with the early church. And this is something they had to say about helping future Jesus followers with their beliefs. It says this: we know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. I'm going to pause there for a second. I feel like a lot of us take that for granted. So we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters because of what Jesus did for us. Therefore, we live that out for other people. If someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person. Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. John had a front row seat to seeing how Jesus loved. Jesus saw the needs of the people, he acknowledged their existence, and he went into action to do something about it. It can be really easy to say that we care for someone or we love someone and say it with our words, but Jesus went first and he showed us that we can not only say that with our words, but we can show that through our actions. And I think you can see all across Scripture by the ways that he sat with people, he healed people, he took time with them. There were things that he did that he acted out on. And I think, too, with John, something interesting about him, if we don't remember from last week, but John was actually there when he saw Jesus being crucified, when he was crucified on the cross. And so John saw firsthand an act that only Jesus can do, the most loving act possible, and witnessed that, something only Jesus could accomplish. Now, I know we all want to be reliable people. We all want to be people that depend on us, that we're trustworthy, that we follow through on what we say, that our words are matching our actions. But how can we keep finding ourselves falling short? What keeps us in the way of that? So one reason could be that loving others requires sacrifice, which can be extremely tricky. So we're going to check out a clip that I think perfectly shows our next point. TikTok video where there's people imitating that scene. Have you guys ever seen that? It's one of my favorite things. I'm happy to send one your way if you need inspiration, or I can try to do an impersonation. And it's fantastic. It's one of the best parts. How many of you guys have seen the first Harry Potter movie? Okay, are there any other fellow Hufflepuffs out there?
Gryffindor.
Only my husband and I. Oh, we got another Hufflepuff. This is fantastic. Okay, well, as you can see in that scene, this is towards the end of the movie, and they're trying to get a hold of the Sorcerer's Stone, and they have to go through these different challenges. And so what we notice is, these three best friends all have unique abilities and talents that they can show up for the people in their lives only the way that they can. So in that movie, earlier, you see Ron introduced to Wizard's Chess, and how, the little characters, instead of just, when you take one of the pieces and you just set it to the side, usually that's just what you do. But in Wizard's Chess, you actually they hit each other and there's violence involved. But Ron had a specific set of talents and he saw the needs, and so he was not only looking out for, okay, how do we win this game, how do we overcome this, but he also had to look out for his friends Harry and Hermione. And eventually, he talks about he's going to sacrifice himself. It's so funny. But he does. He ends up having his character hit. He falls over. He passes out. He's willing to sacrifice himself for his friends. And I think that a lot of us can see our best friends are the people that are willing to sacrifice for us. They're the ones that are willing to go the extra mile to make sure that we have our needs met, that they're showing us that they love us, not just because of the words that they're saying, but because they're showing up for us in that way. Now, James, Jesus' brother, said something similar in a letter to the early churches, helping them to learn to follow Jesus. And so this is what it says. What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye and have a good day, stay warm, and eat well. But then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. Now, someone may argue some people have faith, others have good deeds, but I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. You say you have faith, for you believe that there is one God. Good for you. Even the demons believe this, and they tremble in terror. Now, essentially what that is saying is that our faith must be put into action, and that those actions have to show that we're Christ-like. When I was talking to middle school this morning, this wasn't something that was planned, but sometimes the Holy Spirit just tells you things you need to say, and so I'm going to share this with you guys. I think it'll be helpful. But I think it's super easy when we're around people who are non-believers, who don't believe the same Jesus we do, that aren't convicted by the same things that we are, to look like them, to be like them. And so some of our actions might match what they're doing. But God's asking us that with our faith, that our actions need to look like Christ's follower. Cody was going to bring this up in his message tonight, but he talked about how there is a fruit, and by the type of fruit that tree bears, that's how you know what kind of tree it is. So I want you to sit and think to yourself, like, are the actions that I'm doing, are the things that I'm doing, the way that I'm speaking to other people, the language I'm using around other people, the way that I'm treating my friends, the way that I'm solving conflict, the way that I'm talking about my parents when we argue, are those all loving actions? Am I being loving and Christ-like by those actions? Or am I looking like the rest of the world? And I think what's hard about that is that does put quite a bit of pressure on us, but it's one of those things where if someone realized that you were a Christian, that you had this relationship with Jesus, where you finally went out of your way to ask them to come to church, but none of the actions leading up to that looked like you loved Jesus, how will they believe the gospel? How will they believe that Jesus who he is, if there's someone walking with him that isn't choosing to live a life that looks like he's walking with him? And I think in high school, it's really easy to want to imitate people and to fit in and to just do something so we don't have to worry about any pushback. But what James is saying here is that our faith can communicate love to other people, and our actions communicate love to other people. And that we don't necessarily have to sacrifice ourselves continuously. We don't have to continuously sacrifice ourselves, give all of our time, become people pleasers and try to please everyone. That's not what he's saying. But he's saying is, if you have these resources, if you have this ability to share Jesus with others and to provide for others people's needs, those are the people that he's convicting there. So we need to find a balance between what we can give, what we can offer, and how we can be Christ-like in everything that we're doing. And something that Jesus does really well, one of the most powerful actions I think that he did other than his sacrifice on the cross, is that his ability to show empathy. When we don't have the words to say, sometimes just sitting with someone, and you don't have to say anything. Have you guys ever been there where you're in a rough spot? You don't need the other person to say anything at all, but the fact that they're willing to sit with you and to listen and to not tell you what to do, to not judge what you're saying, but they're just willing to sit with you. That is something so powerful, and that's something that Jesus does with us every single time we come to him in prayer. His empathy is so powerful because Jesus is willing to sit with us in our suffering. He's willing to sit with us in those moments when we feel like no one else understands, when we're tired of people saying they'll be there for us, or they'll pray for us, or they'll support us, and they don't follow through. Jesus knows how that feels because he was betrayed himself over and over and over. But regardless, he still chooses to be loving and to show actions that are loving. We can show people our love for them in our deeds because we know that our actions can speak when words aren't enough. So if we want to be people whose actions speak loudly, we must consider what keeps us from acting. The first one is to notice our feelings. Often we want to act, but we don't know if it's the right time. Have you ever had those moments when something was really sad and you felt for them? Or someone is going through something really hard and it hurt you, and you yourself became emotional, or you yourself were sitting in that suffering with them? Well, that feeling of empathy, that moves us to meet the needs of other people. That's a good thing because you're being like Jesus when you're acting like that. He's willing to sit with us in our pain, and we can be like Jesus when we sit in the suffering with someone else. Next is we need to notice our feelings. We need to notice our limits. I just said notice our feelings. We need to notice our limits. So obviously empathy is amazing, and it helps us to pay attention to the needs of others, but don't forget to pay attention to yourself as well. Are you about to offer up things to other people that you actually can't follow through on? Are you acting for approval or for obligation? It can be super easy to have the desire to please everyone, but usually what happens is we spend all this time meeting everyone else's needs, that when it's just us at the end of the day, we're running on E and we have nothing else to give. Matthew 22:39 says, love others as you love yourself. So I want you guys to take care of yourself so you can take care of other people well. Jesus isn't saying that you have to neglect yourself to take care of the needs, but be aware of, well, this is what I have to offer, and this is how I can offer that up. And lastly is to notice your hesitations. Saying no to a request, as uncomfortable as it may be, that's okay. When you know that you have enough to offer and you don't, like I said earlier, that's what James and John were talking about. And I think it's really easy that we can be convinced that, well, someone else will serve in kids ministry, or someone else will go talk to that person, or someone else will take care of that. It's really easy to push this need for action and just assume everyone else is going to take care of it. But maybe he's asking you to take care of it. Maybe he's prompting you to take action. Maybe that action looks like realizing this person's dealing with the same doubts every single day, or maybe they're struggling with their relationship with God, and so you invite them to students, you invite them to a service so that they can get that need met. Because the only person who can meet every single need of all of ours every single day is Jesus. And so as we head into this time of worship, I just want you guys to take a second and just be in prayer. Think about, God, like, what are the ways that you are moving me to act in love? What are the ways that people are acting in love towards me? How can I show them gratitude? What are the things that are keeping me from acting? And so as we enter into this time of worship, I just want you to think about those things. So I'm going to pray us out and we'll begin worship.